Wasabi. Today's topic is the importance of having a father and a mother too, but I'd like to focus more on the importance of a father, uh, excuse me, as a man, because it, I suspect that it makes a difference if you're a woman or a man. Like your perception of your father and the influence it will have in your life is probably different. According to my research, it is different. In fact, I read, maybe this is not true, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but it kind of makes sense that men have a whose father is present up to the age of 9 tend to live longer than those whose parents are not, whose father is not present. This is for boys. So there is something called a telomere. Telomere, I believe. Maybe I'm mispronouncing it. This is a part of your, I think, is your DNA or some. I'm not a scientist, but the idea is that this is a predictor of longevity, right? The size of this telomere, I think it's called telomere, and for girls, it didn't make a significant impact. The having the father around or not, whereas for boys it did, right? Now that's not to say that women don't have daddy issues, right? That's obvious that they do. I mean, the ones that are father damaged, if you want to use that term. But for boys, I think it's very different, especially because guys, we have a lot of energy generally. It was not my case really, but most boys have a lot of energy and we are looking for some kind of guidance when we're younger, you know? I think we are thirsty, we're hungry for that, you know? And sometimes schools are run mainly by female teachers, you know, and they try to they expect us to behave like girls in a way. You know, why can't you be quiet? Why can't you just sit and do your homework like Mary over here, right? So from my experience, you know, not just in school, but growing up with a in a family where there were more women than men, right? I was conditioned to what is the word? To be very to treat women in a way that to pander to women is what I'm trying to say. Yes, to pander to women. So you you do the right things. You kind of play a woman's game because this is the way it's expected. So in other words, you're not supposed to be very direct. You're not supposed to use bad language because that's naughty. You're not supposed to be aggressive either. You have to just follow the rules and be nice. And I grew up like that, you know. Now, of course, my father was strict, you know. He was very strict, maybe too much sometimes, you know. And he's often accused of that, of having been too strict. Maybe I don't know. I'm not a father, so we will see when it's my turn how I handle that. But um, contrary to this female influence in my life of just be a good boy, just follow the rules, don't be aggressive, be nice. You have the other side, which is, you know, hey man, you follow the rules, but it's I'm not gonna say it in a nice way. Okay, I'm not gonna ask you to please follow the rules. Like, if you don't follow the rules, you're gonna get smacked, or or something like that. I mean, I know that nowadays that is not. I'm not promoting anything here. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just talking about my experience, and I think this is probably the experience of many other men, not just myself. So, and also another thing that is very important is how men play, you know, because with my dad, playing was a bit rougher, you know. Of course, if you're too rough, well, you have to follow the rules as well. but rough and tumble play is kind of expected, you know. Like it's how man we test our strength and the limits, you know. So and also playing with other guys, it was pretty much like that, you know. We played rough, you know. We played rough. We kind of bullied each other, you know. We used to mess with each other. So I think that's a very male thing to do, you know. We kind of like hazing and all that. Like we test each other, you know. And so I think that's why it's another. So I'm forgetting one other aspect, complaining. I hardly ever heard my father complain. That's not to say that he didn't complain, or that he never complained. He did complain, or he it was mainly issues with my mom. So you know, couples, they always have their issues, right? But he was not. I don't remember him complaining excessively about things, especially when things were tough. I think I give him credit. You know, I think he took it like a man. And the funny thing is that in his darkest hour, from my point of view, he never ever, you know, needed an audience to tell people, oh, you know, and I struggled here and I did this, and oh, and you know, so that people could commiserate, you know, or feel sorry for him. I never saw that. So that's not to say that my dad is an angel, you know. We're all flawed one way or another. But I don't remember that. Maybe he did it when I was not around. I don't know. But I don't remember that. So that is another aspect of having a father figure that to me is very useful, you know, because now that I'm older, I know that complaining as a man is not rewarded, you know. Like I don't like being around men who complain, by the way, you know. I don't. So with women I expect it, you know. I mean, it's even cute, you know. That's okay, you know. You know. But as a man is different. So this is the for me this is the importance of having a father, that you, in some ways you are the unsung hero, you know, because I don't think fathers really brag too much about what they did or what they didn't do. From my experiences, is the mother the one that brags more about what they've done for you, you know. And it doesn't mean that it's not true, but they tend to brag more about that. And I think mothers get more credit for being mothers. Like, for example, like growing up, I always gave my mother all the credit in the world, you know, and I still do. I still do. But I never really gave my father much credit, you know. I never thought that, you know, I don't think I even had too much respect for him, really. You know, because he was, I couldn't relate to him in some ways, but on certain levels, and I think that has to do with the fact that I had not been put to the test yet, you know. So after being on my own and experiencing some of the things that he very likely experienced himself, I was able to put myself in his shoes and think, oh, okay, well, this is tougher than it looks, and I'm not here to ask for, you know, credit and but what I'm saying is that guys, what we have to struggle with is often overlooked, you know. And this is something I understand now, and that is why I think I now have more respect for my father, because I don't think he gets a fair he hasn't gotten a fair trial, let's say, you know. And I think a lot of men, we don't get a fair trial, you know, because of course we're privileged, right? Oh yeah, we're privileged. Life is easy as a man, right? Well, maybe it is in some ways. In some ways, it might be easier. Nobody's trying to attack me, you know. Nobody's trying to take advantage of me in that way. Yeah, that's for sure. But there are other areas in which we struggle, you know, and therefore having that point of reference, knowing that your father probably struggled with those same issues silently, because they fathers are not very expressive. Maybe your father is. My father was not. He's playful. But he's not very expressive when it comes to deep issues, and I think that's a very male thing. And then women will say, well, why can't you be in touch with your emotions and all this? Well, we can do it with other men, you know, but we don't get points for doing that. You might claim that you like it, but a man has to be strong. You know, we have to be stoic. So I don't think it's a good habit to be so in touch with your feelings. I mean, I know what I am aware of myself, but I have to be stoic because nobody's gonna come to my rescue, really. You know, as a man, I don't think any, and if anything, I'm going to be blamed for what happens to me. So I have to be responsible. Like if things go wrong, nobody's gonna feel sorry for me and say, oh well, maybe he had mental problems, or maybe this happened to him when he was a kid. Like, I will not get that kind of privilege that, from my experience, girls and women do have. You know, they always have an out, from my experience, you know. But anyway, that's a different matter. Although it's related, it's a different matter, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers because people are very sensitive. Some people, which would actually prove my point, right? But having a father is important, man, because you know this is the last thing I'll say, and you can look it up for yourself if you don't believe me. But the prison, the people in prison, most of this population, they have one thing in common: no father, no father. So guys, and I know at least one guy who also had father issues. He had drinking problems. I mean, it is known that this has a profound impact on a person's well-being, you know. So next time you see your father, you know, maybe don't be so hard on him, you know. Maybe give him some credit, you know. And that's what I'm trying to do now, you know. I'm trying to give my dad some credit, even though I know he's flawed, but so are we all. I mean, so is everybody else, man. But some people get away with being flawed more than others, I think. It has to do also with marketing, you know. I think women in general are very good at networking and having this social support, whereas men, and that brings me to another topic. Sorry for jumping around so much, but it's related. A man has to be useful generally, you know. If you're not useful, you're not really wanted. You know, nobody really wants you around if you're not useful. That is one very tough thing that we men have to struggle with. We have to be useful, you know. And as a father, you make yourself useful. Maybe you don't perform to the level that you're expected to. Well, yeah, that's a possibility. But certainly, you have to be useful. So the men that are not useful end up on the streets, you know. Nobody's gonna pick you up. You know, nobody's gonna put you on a shelter. I mean, maybe, of course, you can always argue that there are shelters and all that, but the kind of help available to man is limited. It's limited, and maybe it has to do. Maybe it's our own fault. Other men are competing. We are always competing, right? So other men might think, well, hey, sorry, tough luck. You know, deal with it. There's very little compassion. I think as men, we're competing, man. We're competing for money. We're competing for access to women. So yeah, it's a cruel world, man. Being a man is not that easy. So if you think that we have it easy, well, even men that are very successful, you'll find that it's not that easy, man. It's not that easy, and a lot of us, we won't say things, but the the amount of self removal in men is very high. I mean, men do it, I think, 3 to 4 times as often as women. You know, when they quit the game, you know what I mean. I can't use the word. So that should tell you something. That should tell you something about men. Now you can always argue, oh yeah, because you guys are, oh, the uh, you're such a crybaby. You have all the privilege, and you're still not happy. Well, that is probably the reason why there is this big clash nowadays between men and women. We often don't speak the same language. It's very sad. Maybe there will come a time in which we'll understand each other a little bit better, and I suspect that it may have to. It may take some a tragedy maybe, or difficult times, for perhaps necessity will force us to cooperate like we used to in the past. And that's not to say that things were not easy for women, or were not hard, I mean, for women, but they were also hard for men. I mean, men suffer in other ways. It's just that we are not, I think, in general, nobody really cares what we have to say, I think, in general. Maybe other men do, especially if you're struggling, or maybe your mother might care, but in general, it's very hard to communicate with people that have very different experiences. So from my experience, nowadays I don't even try to argue. I mean, I can argue for fun, but I don't. My expectations are not very high, and of course I want to be conciliatory, with women, with other men, especially with women, because that is, we live in different worlds. So I try to put myself in their shoes, and even though I will never ever know what it's like to be a woman, because I'm not one, well, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I I would expect them to extend the same courtesy to us as men, meaning give us the benefit of the doubt, man. Especially to fathers, man. If you have a father, again, your father, your husband, try to give him the benefit of the doubt, because there may be deeper reasons that you're not familiar with, and you might be jumping to conclusions. At least that has been my experience. And the more I do that, the better it is for me. So I think you should try to do that. I mean, be less judgmental. Although it's nearly impossible, man. I mean, we're all judgmental, yeah. But I remember one phrase, and everybody knows this phrase. It's not a mystery. Grant that I shall not criticize my neighbor until I have walked a mile in his moccasins. I remember that phrase, as a kid. It's very true, man. It's very easy to judge, and we all do it. I'm not here, pretending to be perfect. I do it all the time. In fact, I enjoy judging people. It's fun. It's fun making fun of people. I make fun of myself too, to be fair. But if we're gonna be serious, I mean, as Charles Manson said in an interview, if justice were to come, we would all be in trouble. And Jesus said a similar thing, that he who is free of sin cast the first stone. Right, see? Nothing new under the sun. Okay, I've talked too much for today. Sorry for keeping your time. Um, See you around. Peace out.